How Rockefeller, the most hated man in America, bought his own salvation. A cinematic close-up of a human eye reflecting the golden glint of an antique gold coin. The camera slowly pulls back to reveal John D. Rockefeller, seated in a Victorian office steeped in deep shadows, where cigar smoke hangs like mist beneath the amber glow of a kerosene lamp. Imagine that you possess a key that opens every door in the global economy. In 1872, a man didn't just find this key, he forged it in the blood of the Cleveland market. The entire world knows John D. Rockefeller as the Titan of oil, the philanthropist in the dark suit. But what nobody realized was that Standard Oil never truly died. While the world was busy celebrating a government victory in 1911 for tearing his empire apart, Rockefeller was silently executing the final stage of a plan that would take 100 years to be fully understood. A rapid transition of old paper documents being consumed by fire, transforming into lines of glowing blue code on a modern, state-of-the-art data server. Today, you believe you live in a free market, choosing between giants like Amazon and Apple. But if you dive into the obscure records of the 1911 Supreme Court, you will discover that John's surgical coldness was not buried. It was digitized. The question you should be asking yourself is not how he became rich, but why the exact method he used to crush his rivals is precisely what is draining your bank account right now, at this very second. You are being told that monopoly is a thing of the past, yet you are caught in a web designed by a man who saw competition as a sin against the divine order of efficiency. An elderly Rockefeller, with his stern silhouette and monastic discipline, sits in a worn leather armchair. Half of his face is bathed in light while the other half remains in absolute darkness in true noir style. While the world looked at his public donations, Rockefeller was silently building a fortress that would protect his bloodline for centuries. He wasn't just hoarding money. He was designing a new reality. The answer to your financial freedom is hidden within a mistake the government made a century ago. And in the next few minutes, I am going to hand you that weapon. We are about to uncover the ghost in the machine of modern capitalism. The metallic clang of a heavy safe closing, echoing in an empty marble room, as the video title appears in golden letters against an absolute black background. A courtroom in 1911, captured in high-contrast noir. Massive mahogany doors swing shut with a heavy thud. Reporters are frantically writing, their faces lit by the harsh flash of old cameras. Rockefeller stands in the center, a gaunt figure with a surgical coldness, showing no emotion as the judge hammers the final blow. The world thought they had finally won. When the Supreme Court ordered the dissolution of Standard Oil in 1911, the headlines screamed that the monster was dead. The public celebrated in the streets, believing that the era of the hated man had ended and that the free market was safe again. But what nobody realized was that Rockefeller had already seen the verdict coming years before the judge even picked up his pen. While the government was busy slicing his empire into 34 separate pieces, John was silently laughing in the shadows of his estate. He didn't fight the breakup. He embraced it because he understood a fundamental law of wealth that the regulators completely missed, an abstract visual of a large black map of the United States. Suddenly it cracks like glass, but instead of falling apart, each shard begins to glow with an intense golden light, interconnected by invisible glowing threads. Documentos da época reveal that this wasn't a defeat, it was a strategic shedding of skin. By forcing Standard Oil to split into companies like Exxon, Mobil, and Chevron, the government unintentionally solved Rockefeller's biggest problem: management bloat and public visibility. He realized that 34 smaller, specialized monopolies were far more efficient and harder to track than one giant target. As these new entities began to compete in the emerging age of the automobile, their stock prices didn't just rise, they exploded. Rockefeller's personal net worth doubled almost overnight, making him the first official billionaire in history, precisely because the world tried to stop him. A split screen. On the left, Rockefeller's thin hand signs a stock certificate. On the right, a modern hand swipes a credit card. The background of both sides is an intricate web of corporate logos that all lead back to the same source. This was the birth of the invisible empire. He moved from being a visible target to becoming a ghost in the financial system. If you look at how modern giants operate today, You see the same playbook. When a big tech company faces a massive fine or a forced spin-off, pay attention to the shareholders. Just like Rockefeller, the true power players don't care about the name on the building. They care about the underlying ownership of the assets. He taught the elite that the best way to control the world is to let people think they have a choice. While you think you are choosing between different brands at the gas station or different apps on your phone, you are often just paying different pockets of the same coat. The trap was set in 1911, and we are still walking into it. Rockefeller's piercing gaze stares directly into the camera. The sound of a clock ticking begins to speed up, transitioning into the rapid-fire sound of a computer processing data. But how did a simple bookkeeper develop the mental hardware to outsmart the entire United States government? The answer lies in a small, weathered notebook he carried long before he had his first million. A flickering candle illuminates a small wooden desk in a cold, cramped room. A young teenage Rockefeller is hunched over, his face pale and focused. The only sound is the rhythmic, sharp scratching of a quill pen against paper. He isn't writing a diary. He is recording every single cent in a small red leather book known as Ledger A. Long before the world knew his name, John D. Rockefeller was a human algorithm. While other teenagers were chasing dreams or wasting time, John was obsessed with a predatory discipline that bordered on the divine. Documentos de Epoca reveal that he treated his accounting book, Ledger A, as his personal Bible. He recorded every transaction, every loaf of bread, and every penny earned with a surgical coldness. To John, a cent wasn't just money, it was a unit of power. He understood that in the chaos of the mid-19th century, the person who possessed the most accurate data would eventually possess the world. He was a primitive programmer in an analog age, building the mental software that would eventually crush every titan of industry. The pages of Ledger A begin to flip rapidly. As they turn, the handwritten numbers transform into glowing binary code, ones and zeros, that flow out of the book and start to construct the skeletal frame of a massive oil refinery. This was the genesis of the algorithm. Rockefeller didn't run his business on intuition or gut feelings. He ran it on ruthless microscopic data. He was known to walk through his refineries and count exactly how many drops of solder were used to seal a kerosene can. When he discovered that 39 drops were used, he demanded his engineers try 38. When 38 drops caused a leak, but 39 didn't, he settled on 39. This saved him hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. He was optimizing for marginal gains a century before the term existed. This monastica discipline allowed him to see holes in the market that his competitors were too arrogant to notice. While they were looking at the big picture, John was weaponizing the details. A modern warehouse filled with thousands of robotic arms moving in perfect, terrifying synchronization. In the background, the silhouette of a modern tech CEO is overlaid with the ghost of Rockefeller watching over a ledger. Compare this to the world you live in today. Every time you click a button or browse a product, an algorithm is doing exactly what Rockefeller did with his quill pen, counting the drops. Modern giants like Amazon and Google are built on the same foundation of Ledger A. They aren't just selling products, they are mining the tiniest data points to eliminate waste and maximize control. Rockefeller understood that if you control the data of a system, the system eventually belongs to you. He didn't just build an oil company. He built a machine that could calculate the most efficient path to total dominance. Close-up of Rockefeller's eyes. They are cold and unblinking. The reflection in his pupils shifts from the flickering candlelight of the desk to the sterile blue glow of a 2026 computer monitor. He proved that wealth isn't built by taking big risks, but by eliminating them through microscopic precision. But even with the most perfect data, he still needed a way to paralyze his enemies without firing a single shot. To do that, he had to find the industry's jugular vein and squeeze. A sprawling railway yard in the 1870s at dusk. Giant black steam locomotives hiss and belch thick, suffocating coal smoke into a bruised purple sky. Rockefeller stands on a high wooden platform, looking down at the tracks as if they were the strings of a grand instrument. While his competitors were busy fighting over who could dig the most oil out of the ground, Rockefeller was playing a much deeper game. He realized that the oil itself was secondary. The true power lay in the movement. He identified the industry's jugular vein, the railroads. Documentos da época reveal a secret strategy so ruthless it would later be studied as a masterpiece of economic warfare. John didn't just ask the railroads for a discount to ship his oil. He demanded a rebate on every barrel his competitors shipped. Think about the surgical coldness of that. Every time a rival refinery sent a barrel of oil to market, they were unknowingly paying Rockefeller a fee. He turned his enemies into his involuntary investors, using their own costs to fund his expansion. The camera follows a single barrel of oil on a train car. As it moves across the screen, a spectral hand reaches out and plucks a golden coin from the air above it. The scene shifts to a modern logistics map with glowing lines representing global shipping routes. This was the birth of the invisible tax. Rockefeller didn't need to win a price war. He simply made it impossible for anyone else to exist. By integrating his business into the very infrastructure of the nation, he became a gatekeeper. He transformed the railroads from independent carriers into his private vassals. This is the exact strategy we see today with modern digital ecosystems. When you sell a product on a major marketplace or an app through a dominant mobile store, you are paying a digital rebate. You are doing the work, taking the risk, and shipping the product, but a percentage of your effort is automatically diverted to the gatekeeper. Rockefeller didn't want to be the player. He wanted to be the stadium. A dark, oily liquid begins to flow over a map of the United States, but as it spreads, it turns into a network of fiber optic cables. Rockefeller's silhouette is reflected in the black oil, his face a mask of predatory ambition. He understood that if you control the bottleneck, you control the world. By 1879, he didn't just own the refineries, he owned the pipelines, the storage tanks, and the very terms of trade. He had created a system where the harder his competitors worked, the richer he became. It was a loop of total dominance that left no room for oxygen. He was no longer just a businessman. He was a sovereign power dictating the price of light for every home in America. But such a massive concentration of power couldn't remain hidden forever. A storm was gathering, led by a woman who had spent her life watching the ghost in the machine, waiting for the right moment to strike. A close-up of a typewriter key striking a piece of paper with a loud, echoey crack. The ink on the paper looks like a fresh oil spill. A dimly lit office filled with towering stacks of dusty papers and legal files. Ida Tarbell, with a look of piercing intelligence and fierce determination, is hunched over a desk. The only sound is the frantic, rhythmic clacking of her typewriter. In a parallel scene, Rockefeller sits in a silent, cavernous hall, his face a stone mask of indifference. Every predator eventually meets a force they cannot buy. And for Rockefeller, that force was Ida Tarbell. She wasn't just a journalist. She was a corporate crime investigator with a personal vendetta. Documentos da época reveal that Tarbell's father had been one of the many small oilmen crushed during the Cleveland Massacre. She had watched the light go out in her father's eyes, and she spent years mining the shadows to find the man responsible. In 1902, she began publishing her exposé on Standard Oil, stripping away the carefully crafted image of the pious businessman. But Rockefeller's response was perhaps the most terrifying part of his strategy: absolute surgical silence. He didn't issue denials, he didn't sue for libel, and he didn't even mention her name. A visual of a massive, dark stone fortress. Outside, a storm of newspapers and shouting crowds rages. Inside, Rockefeller is seen calmly reading a book by a single candle, completely undisturbed by the chaos. This was the quiet war. Rockefeller understood the psychology of power better than anyone. He knew that to react was to validate the attacker. He utilized a monastica discipline of silence to turn himself into a void. While the public screamed for his head, he became a ghost. He understood that in a war of narratives, the person who speaks least often controls the frequency. He waited for the storm to exhaust itself, believing that facts are temporary but power is permanent. This is a masterclass in modern crisis management. Today, when major corporations or public figures go dark during a scandal, they are using the Rockefeller shield. They know that in the age of the 24-hour news cycle, Silence is the only way to let the fire burn out. A modern newsroom with dozens of screens showing breaking news and social media feeds. The screens suddenly go black, and a single unblinking eye appears in the center. But Tarbell had already done the impossible. She had made the invisible monster visible. She revealed that his wealth wasn't built on superior products, but on the systematic destruction of human lives. This sparked a national rage that even Rockefeller's silence couldn't suppress. The public began to see that his control over oil was actually a control over their freedom. However, John was already 3 steps ahead of the anger. He realized that if he couldn't hide his power, he would make it so essential that the world would be terrified to lose it. He was about to engineer a world where human existence itself depended on his shadow. A hand turns a key in a car ignition. As the engine roars to life, the exhaust smoke transforms into the shape of Rockefeller's gaunt, smiling face, hovering over a modern city, a vast, barren landscape of the late 19th century. In the background, thousands of people are using diverse energy sources: wood fires, whale oil lamps, and experimental coal gas. Suddenly, a massive black wave of crude oil pours from the top of the screen, drenching the entire map until every other light source is extinguished, leaving only the cold, flickering glow of a standard oil lamp. Rockefeller didn't just want to lead the energy market, he wanted to become the market. Documentos de Época reveal a predatory ambition to force a global transition that would bind human progress to his specific product for a century. He saw that as long as people had choices, whale oil for light or wood for heat, he was just a merchant. To become a god, he had to engineer a monopoly of necessity. He systematically used his financial weight to crush or buy out alternative energy startups of his era, ensuring that the entire infrastructure of the modern world was built on a single, oily foundation. He was the architect of a world where you couldn't eat, move, or stay warm without paying him a dividend. An old wooden horse-drawn carriage sits in a barn. Outside, a sleek, black early Model T Ford drives past. The camera zooms into the gas tank of the Ford, showing the liquid inside turning into a web of glowing gold lines that stretch across the globe. This was the birth of engineered scarcity. Rockefeller understood that true power comes not from what you provide, but from what you withhold. By the early 1900s, he had ensured that the emerging internal combustion engine was tied exclusively to gasoline, a byproduct he controlled. He didn't just sell fuel, he sold the only allowed future. This is the exact playbook we see with modern tech ecosystems and software-as-a-service models. You don't own the tools you use. You rent them from a gatekeeper who has eliminated all other viable options. Rockefeller taught the world that the most profitable way to run an economy is to make sure the door to the future only has one key: a modern city skyline at night. The lights of the buildings begin to pulse like a heartbeat. As the camera zooms out, the pulse is revealed to be synced with the rhythmic pumping of an old-fashioned oil derrick in a dark field. He successfully sealed the geopolitical fate of the 20th century by making the survival of nations dependent on the supply of his black gold. He realized that if he controlled the energy, he controlled the movement of armies and the growth of cities. He was no longer a man. He was the pulse of civilization itself. Every light bulb and every engine was a reminder of his surgical coldness. But as he looked at his vast, oily empire, he realized that even an immortal company has a flaw. It is still made of mortal men. To truly rule forever, he had to find a way to make the corporation itself a living, breathing, and eternal entity. A laboratory glass slides under a microscope. Inside, a drop of oil begins to divide like a biological cell, forming the shape of a corporate logo. A sterile cold chamber where a massive stone sculpture of a man is being chiseled away. As the stone falls, it reveals not a human body, but an intricate clockwork mechanism made of steel and oil. Rockefeller stands beside it, adjusting a gear with the precision of a surgeon. Rockefeller realized that the greatest threat to a fortune isn't a competitor or a government, but time itself. A man dies, his children squander the wealth, and the empire crumbles. To prevent this, he performed a feat of corporate alchemy that would change the world forever. Documentos da Época reveal that John didn't just build a company, he pioneered the concept of the corporation as a separate, immortal legal person. He took the liquid, chaotic nature of his oil empire and refined it into a rigid, indestructible structure. He sought to create a body that could breathe, grow, and sue, but never bleed or age. This was the birth of the modern corporate DNA, designed with a surgical coldness to survive long after its creator was in the grave. A vintage photograph of Rockefeller slowly fades, and in its place, a complex organizational chart appears. The boxes on the chart begin to move on their own, growing, merging, and dividing like biological cells under a microscope. This was the reattribution of life. Rockefeller understood that by separating the individual from the entity, he could exercise absolute power without personal liability. He created a system where the spirit of the machine dictated every action, driven only by the logic of Ledger A. If the man was piously religious, the corporation was ruthlessly immoral. This is the exact architectural ghost that haunts our economy today. When you see modern tech giants making decisions that seem to lack human empathy, you are seeing Rockefeller's ghost in the machine. He taught the world how to build entities that have the rights of a person, but the heart of a cold, calculated algorithm. A glass skyscraper at night reflecting a dark, oily river below. Inside, shadows move behind the windows, but no faces are visible. The lights of the skyscraper form a perfect, glowing pyramid. By making the corporation immortal, he ensured that his predatory ambition would become the default setting for global business. He replaced the family business with the multinational engine, a force that could bypass national borders and outlive kings. He had successfully decoupled power from the human soul. However, as the machine grew more powerful, the public's hatred reached a boiling point. Rockefeller knew that even an immortal machine needs a mask of kindness to survive a revolution. He was about to begin his most complex refinery project yet, turning the blackest reputation in history into a blindingly white light of salvation. A drop of black oil falls into a bowl of clear water. Instead of clouding the water, the oil suddenly transforms into a pure, white lily. A black and white film reel of a mob burning an effigy of Rockefeller. The scene cuts to a pristine white marble laboratory, where a scientist in a lab coat is peering through a high-end microscope. The transition is seamless, as if the smoke from the fire becomes the sterile vapor of the lab. By 1913, Rockefeller was the most hunted man in America, a target for every politician and a villain in every household. He realized that no amount of silence could protect his machine from a public that wanted to burn it down. Documentos da Época reveal that he didn't turn to charity out of a sudden burst of guilt, but as a sophisticated act of reputation insurance. He applied the same surgical coldness to his image that he had to his oil refineries. He decided to buy the one thing money usually can't buy, a clean conscience in the eyes of history. This was the birth of the philanthropic shield, a strategic investment designed to sanitize a blood-soaked fortune and turn a predator into a patriarch. A golden coin is dropped into a slot. On the other side of a glass wall, the coin transforms into a vaccine vial, then a textbook, then a hospital bed. Rockefeller is seen in the background, carefully adjusting the flow of these items like he once adjusted the valves of a pipeline. This was the investment in social immortality. Rockefeller didn't just give money away, he processed it. He founded the Rockefeller Foundation with a monastic discipline, treating social problems as inefficiencies to be solved by the same logic of Ledger A. He funded universities, medical research, and public health initiatives on a scale the world had never seen. By doing so, he effectively bought the silence of the future. How can you curse the man who funded the cure for your disease or the school where your children learn? This is the exact playbook used by modern tech billionaires who use high-profile foundations to pivot from monopolist to savior. Rockefeller taught the elite that the best way to keep your power is to make your money indispensable to the survival of the masses. A large ancient library. A hand pulls a dusty book titled The History of Oil off the shelf. But the title on the spine suddenly changes to The History of Modern Medicine. The camera pans to a portrait of a smiling, kindly Rockefeller hanging on the wall. He successfully weaponized generosity to erase the memory of the Cleveland massacre. He became the father of modern medicine, not because he was a doctor, but because he was the only one with enough capital to dictate the direction of scientific research. He traded his black gold for a white lab coat, creating a legacy that is almost impossible to criticize without attacking the very foundations of modern society. He had purchased his salvation, but this new interest in science wasn't just about healing. Within the sterile halls of his foundations, a much darker and more ambitious project was quietly taking shape. A search for control that went deeper than oil, straight into the very blueprint of life itself. A double helix of DNA appears on a screen. As it rotates, the rungs of the ladder are revealed to be tiny, interlocking Rockefeller Foundation logos. A sterile laboratory in the 1920s. The walls are white and cold, illuminated by flickering fluorescent tubes. Scientists in stiff white coats move with a surgical coldness, handling glass slides. In the background, a massive chart of the human body is overlaid with geometric patterns and mathematical equations. While the world praised him for building hospitals, Rockefeller was privately obsessed with a much deeper form of control. He had mastered the energy of the earth. Now he wanted to master the energy of the soul. Documentos da época reveal that the Rockefeller Foundation became the primary engine behind the early, obscure research into genetics and eugenics. This wasn't just about curing the sick. It was about the monastica discipline of improving the human race through the same logic of industrial efficiency. He sought a biological algorithm. To John, humanity was just another raw material that needed to be refined, filtered, and standardized to remove the waste of the weak and the inefficient. A microscopic view of a human cell. As the camera zooms in, the cell nucleus begins to take on the shape of a corporate boardroom. The DNA strands are being manipulated by tiny, glowing mechanical arms that look like miniature oil derricks. This was the biotechnological bridge. Rockefeller understood that true immortality wouldn't come from oil, but from the ability to dictate the very blueprint of life. By funding the elite laboratories of the early 20th century, he ensured that the emerging science of biology would be built on his foundation of predatory ambition. He was shifting the focus from controlling the fuel people burned to controlling the people themselves. We see this exact echo today in the massive investments big tech moguls make into life extension, synthetic biology, and data-driven healthcare. They are following the Rockefeller path. If you own the code of life, you own the ultimate monopoly. A wide shot of a modern city. The people walking the streets are glowing with a faint, digital aura. Above them, a massive spectral Rockefeller Foundation logo hangs in the sky like a second moon, casting a cold blue light over everything. He was quietly laying the groundwork for a future where human existence would be a managed asset. To John, a human being was simply a biological machine that required a specific type of maintenance and optimization to serve the grander machine of the economy. This wasn't a search for a soul. It was a search for a more perfect engine. He had successfully tied his wealth to the very cells of the human body. However, to keep this global project running, he needed more than just laboratories. He needed a way to control the flow of value itself, transmuting his black liquid into the very oxygen of the global financial system. A drop of oil falls into a vat of liquid gold. As they mix, they form a swirling, dark green currency bill that begins to replicate, filling the screen with the sound of a high-speed money-counting machine. The dark interior of a high-security bank vault. In the center, a massive, glowing barrel of oil sits on a pedestal. As the camera zooms in, the oil inside begins to swirl and solidify into gold bars, which then flatten into crisp, green banknotes. The banknotes begin to fly out of the vault, forming a global network of glowing lines that encircle the earth. Rockefeller understood that while oil was the blood of the world, credit was its oxygen. To control the engine, he had to control the air it breathed. Documentos da época reveal a surgical coldness in how the family transitioned from industrial titans to the architects of global finance. This was the transmutation of oil into credit. He realized that a monopoly on energy was finite. but a monopoly on the creation of money was eternal. Through the monastica discipline of his banking allies and his influence on the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913, the Rockefeller fortune was moved from the volatile oil fields into the very foundation of the American dollar. He ensured that the black gold of the 19th century became the green fuel of the 20th. A 1913 dollar bill is held up to a light. The watermark is not a president but a faint, ghostly image of a Standard Oil derrick. The scene shifts to a modern stock exchange where the ticker tape is flowing with the speed of a high-pressure pipeline. This was the birth of the petrodollar system before it even had a name. Rockefeller taught the world that true wealth isn't about owning things, but about owning the debt of others. By moving his capital into the banking sector, most notably through what would become Chase Manhattan Bank, he gained the power to fund or starve entire nations. This is the exact strategy used by modern financial elites who control the pipes of global payments. They don't need to produce anything. They simply collect a fee on every heartbeat of the economy. Rockefeller had successfully upgraded his machine from an oil refinery into a global currency refinery, making his family the silent partners in every government on the planet. A large, ornate meeting room with a mahogany table. Around the table sit shadows, and at the head of the table is Rockefeller's empty high-backed chair. On the table, a map of the world is being redrawn with a compass made of gold. He had established a dynasty that didn't just participate in the world's economy, it owned the infrastructure of the economy itself. He had created a financial ghost that would haunt every transaction for a century. But as the world moved from the age of atoms to the age of bits, the Rockefeller playbook was about to find its most terrifying application. The same predatory ambition that conquered the oil fields was being quietly uploaded into the digital clouds of the 21st century, a classic oil painting of a 19th century landscape. Suddenly, a digital glitch ripples across the canvas, revealing a matrix of green code underneath that matches the exact structure of the oil pipelines. The screen flickers with digital static. A vintage black and white image of Rockefeller's face is slowly reconstructed by 1,000,000 tiny pixels. As the image clears, we see his cold, surgical eyes being mirrored by the glowing blue light of a modern smartphone screen. The sound of an old telegraph merges into the high-pitched hum of a data center. Rockefeller didn't need a computer to invent the digital age. He already had the logic. Documents of the era reveal that the predatory ambition he used to conquer the oil fields was the exact blueprint for the Silicon Valley giants of the 21st century. This is the shadow in the cloud. Rockefeller taught the world that the goal isn't just to sell a product, but to own the entire ecosystem where that product exists. He didn't just want the oil. He wanted the barrels, the trains, and the roads. Today, when a tech giant owns the hardware, the operating system, and the payment platform, they aren't innovating. They are simply running the 1872 Rockefeller playbook in a digital format. An old map of Standard Oil's pipelines is overlaid with a modern map of global fiber optic cables. The two maps are a perfect match, every node and bottleneck aligning with surgical precision. This is the birth of the digital monopoly. Rockefeller understood that if you control the rails of society, you can tax every interaction. In the 1870s, it was the railroads. Today, it is the App Store and the cloud server. He pioneered the concept of the closed loop, where a customer never has to or never can leave your environment. This is the exact strategy of modern tech ecosystems that keep you locked into their software through sheer convenience and lack of alternatives. Rockefeller's monastica discipline for efficiency has been transformed into a user experience designed to keep you clicking, scrolling, and paying. He didn't just build a company, he built the architecture of modern dependence. A modern city street where everyone is looking down at their phones. Above them, a ghostly, transparent Rockefeller derrick is being built out of glowing bits of data, its pump moving in time with their thumb swipes. The rebates he once demanded from railroads have evolved into the data mining of today. You are the raw material being refined. Rockefeller realized that the person who owns the most accurate data on the system will eventually own the system. Modern giants are simply his digital heirs, using his surgical coldness to eliminate friction and maximize control over your time and money. He proved that the most profitable thing you can own is a person's habit. But even with the world's data in his pocket, Rockefeller knew that visible power is a target. To survive the next century, he had to hide his bloodline in a place where no tax collector or revolutionary could ever find it. A digital safe door opens, revealing not gold or oil, but an endless spiraling staircase of legal documents and family crests that disappear into a dark, bottomless void. An expansive, dusty archive room where the ceiling is lost in darkness. Thousands of identical gray folders are stacked on steel shelves. A lawyer with a surgical coldness pulls out a single sheet of paper with a golden seal. As he turns the page, the names of companies and assets shift and transform like a kaleidoscope, making it impossible to pin down a single owner. While the world obsessed over the Forbes list of billionaires, Rockefeller was busy making his fortune disappear from public view. He realized that a visible name is a target for the tax collector and the populist alike. Documentos da época reveal that he perfected the trust and the family office, structures designed with a monastica discipline to protect wealth across generations without ever triggering a death tax. He didn't want to own the world. He wanted to control the entities that owned the world. This was the birth of the hereditary code, a system where the Rockefeller bloodline was shielded by layers of legal shadows. This strategy ensured that while the man died, the predatory ambition of his capital remained immortal. A family tree is drawn on a chalkboard. Instead of names, each branch is a bank, a foundation, or a real estate holding. The roots of the tree are buried deep in an offshore island where the soil is made of black oil and gold coins. This is the hidden dynasty. Rockefeller taught the elite that the ultimate power is anonymity. By splitting the family wealth into hundreds of private trusts, he created a financial ghost that is everywhere but nowhere. Today, when you look at the major shareholders of the world's most powerful banks and energy companies, you won't see Rockefeller at the top. Instead, you see a web of asset management firms and private holdings that lead back to the same architectural foundation he laid a century ago. This is the exact playbook used by the modern ultra-wealthy to maintain a monopoly of influence over global policy while remaining invisible to the average citizen. He proved that the best way to rule a room is to be the only person who knows everyone else's name while no one knows yours. A high-end boardroom in 2026. The chairs are occupied by figures in tailored suits, but their faces are blurred. On the table, a digital map shows the Rockefeller Foundation's global reach in healthcare, food, and energy. The heartbeat sound of a machine pulses in the background. He successfully engineered a future where his family could exercise sovereign-level power without a throne. He realized that if you own the foundations of a society, its health, its food, and its money, you don't need to hold office. You are the silent partner in every government's decision. This is the ultimate victory of the surgical coldness he practiced in Cleveland. He didn't just win the game of capitalism, he became the board on which the game is played. But as we reach the end of this journey, one final question remains. Was his salvation a gift to humanity, or was it the final payment for a debt we are all still serving? Rockefeller's thin, elderly hand reaches out and turns a dimmer switch. The lights in a modern city go dark, except for one small flickering lamp in a window. The camera slowly pans across a vast, quiet graveyard at dawn. It stops at a simple, unadorned granite monument for John D. Rockefeller. The scene fades into a modern city at night, where millions of lights flicker like a digital heartbeat. The sound of a distant, rhythmic oil pump merges with the hum of a high-speed internet server. Finally, we must face the disturbing reality of the man who bought the future. Rockefeller was the only figure in history who successfully purchased his way into the heaven of public opinion. He realized that while you can't take your money with you, you can use it to build a world that never forgets your name, even if it forgets your crimes. He traded the Baron Ladrone label for the title of Patriarch of Progress, using his surgical coldness to sanitize his legacy through the very institutions that now define our lives. Every time you flip a light switch, take a medicine developed in a modern lab, or use a digital platform built on his monopoly logic, you are paying a silent dividend to his ghost. A split screen. On one side, Rockefeller is handing a dime to a small child with a practiced, kindly smile. On the other side, a dark oil spill is slowly consuming a pristine coastline. The two images begin to blur together until they are indistinguishable. Was his salvation a gift or a cage? He provided the light that illuminated the world, but he did it by owning the shadow that followed. He proved that with enough capital and a monastica discipline, you can rebrand predatory ambition as global service. The world we live in 2026 is the house that John built, a world of total integration, managed scarcity, and invisible gatekeepers. He didn't just save his soul, he immortalized his system. He taught the elite that the ultimate power isn't owning people's bodies, but owning the infrastructure of their survival. His life was the ultimate business deal. He gave away his fortune to ensure that his influence would never have to end. The camera zooms in on a single drop of oil on a white marble floor. Inside the reflection of the drop, we see a modern person looking at their reflection in a smartphone. The drop is then wiped away by a hand in a white lab coat. As you look at the giants of today's economy, remember that they are all speaking a language Rockefeller invented. He is the silent partner in your bank account, the hidden hand in your healthcare, and the architect of the digital walls that surround you. The question is no longer whether Rockefeller was forgiven. The question is whether we are willing to see the ghost in the machine before it finishes refining the rest of our world. You are not just a spectator of this history, you are the final product of his century-long strategy. And the debt he settled for his own salvation is a debt that humanity is still paying every single day. The screen goes to black. The only thing remaining is the sound of a single, echoing tick of a clock, followed by the faint, mechanical whir of a server cooling down. Black screen with no text.